Hi there. I'm George Tuss, and this is the Spirit of Dating podcast. We've been building something together over these past few episodes. We talked about knowing your worth, about what safety actually feels like in your body, about the difference between real attraction and fantasy. And now we're getting into something that might make you feel a little uncomfortable. Testing. You know what I'm talking about. That moment when you text someone back slower than usual, just to see if they'll notice. When you pull back a little to see if they'll chase. When you mention another guy's name and watch for the reaction. We call it protecting ourselves, reading the situation, making sure they're really into us. But here's what it actually is. It's testing. And most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. Look, I get it. Dating feels risky. You've been hurt before. You've given your heart to people who didn't handle it carefully. So now you got this internal system, this early warning radar, trying to detect danger before you go in too deep. But nobody talks about this. Testing isn't creating safety, it destroys it. Every time you test someone, you're sending a message, not to them, but to yourself. You're saying, I don't trust this, I don't trust them, and honestly, I don't trust love. And the person on the receiving end, they feel it. Even if they can't name it, their nervous system picks up on it. That constant evaluation, that feeling they're always being graded, like no matter what they do, it's never quite enough. That's exhausting. And eventually, good people walk away. Not because they don't care, but because they got tired of being on trial. So today we're talking about the testing game, where it comes from, why we do it, and most importantly, how to stop sabotaging the very thing we're trying to protect. Because here's what Spirit keeps whispering through every anxious test, every pullback moment, every time we create distance to feel safe. Tests disappear where trust is felt. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Jenna. Jenna came to me for a reading about 3 months into dating someone. Let's call him Marcus. And right away, she said something that made me pause. She said, I need to know if he's the one, because I've been testing him, and I'm not sure if he's passing. Testing him? Those were her exact words. So I asked her to tell me about him. He's great. Like, actually great, she said. He texts me back. He doesn't play games. He wants to see me. He's even mentioned me meeting his family. She paused, and I could hear the confusion in her voice. But that's the problem. It feels too good to be true, you know? So I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. And lately, in the last few weeks, I've been testing him more and more. Like I need to find the crack before it breaks me. I don't even mean to do it. It just happens. And now I think I'm ruining it. Then she began telling me about all these little experiments she's been running. She texted him something vulnerable like, I had a rough day, and if he didn't respond in exactly the way she wanted, she'd pull back, go cold, make him chase her attention again. She'd mention an ex casually, just to see if Marcus would get jealous. And when he didn't react the way she expected, when he just said, oh, that's cool, and kept the conversation moving, she felt this wave of panic. Does he even care, she said to me. If he really loves me, wouldn't he be more affected? And then she listed more. She canceled plans last minute to see if he'd fight for her time. She'd go quiet for a day or two just to see if he'd notice. She'd drop hints about other guys being interested in her. And every single time Marcus didn't react with jealousy or anxiety or desperation, Jenna interpreted it as proof that he wasn't invested enough. Finally, after one of those tests, I think she's gone radio silent for a couple of days, Marcus called her. This was actually the week before she came to see me. And she told me what he said. She said it landed like a punch. Jenna, I feel like I'm always on trial with you. Like nothing I do is ever enough. I don't even know what you need from me, but I'm exhausted trying to figure it out. She told me she'd never forget that conversation. Because in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She wasn't testing him to see if he was right for her. She was testing him to see if love could actually survive her fear. See, here's what Jenna didn't know about herself yet. And this is the part that's going to sound familiar to a lot of you listening. As she kept on talking, telling me about all the little tests she's been running, I started shuffling the cards. And then I pulled the Seven of Swords, reversed. The moment I laid it down, I just looked at her for a second. I said, "You see this card? Upright, it's about strategy, self protection, hidden agendas. It's the energy of someone moving through life with their guard up, always watching for threats." She nodded slowly. She was already starting to see herself in it. But reverse, it's about truth coming to light, self deception being revealed. This card is spirit saying, you can't build intimacy with armor on. That's when she started crying. Not big sobs, just quiet tears. The kind that come when something true lands in your chest and you can't pretend anymore. She sat there for a minute, just looking at the card. Then she said something I'll never forget. "I've been so focused on making sure he didn't hurt me that I didn't realize I was the one hurting us." We sat with that for a while. And then she started telling me about her childhood, about her dad, how he'd been emotionally inconsistent. Some days warm, present, engaged. Other days distant, critical, unavailable. She said, "I never knew what version of him I'd get." Her voice got quieter as she continued. "So I learned to just stay quiet. Wait and see if it was safe before I said what I actually felt. I guess I'm still doing that." And that made sense. That survival strategy worked when she was a kid. It kept her safe. But now, with Marcus, that same pattern was destroying the very thing she wanted most. Now, this is important. I've been on both sides of this. I've been the one doing the testing. Years ago, when I was still in that nice guy mode, trying to please everyone, I'd test too. I'd pull back to see if a woman would pursue me. I'd go quiet to see if she noticed. I'd make myself less available to see if she actually valued me more. It was all rooted in the same fear Jenna had. If I show up fully, will they choose me? Or will I get hurt again? But I also been on Marcus's side of things. I've been with women who tested me constantly. And honestly, it destroyed my ability to relax into the relationship. One woman I dated used to bring up her ex all the time. And it wasn't because she was still processing or healing from it. She was watching me, waiting to see if I'd get jealous or territorial. And every time I just stayed calm, be supportive, she'd just get more anxious. Eventually, she told me I was too emotionally unavailable. And I realized she didn't want my calm present. She wanted my jealousy. Because in her mind, jealousy equates caring. That's not love. That's chaos mistaken for chemistry. And here's what I've learned the hard way, both as a person testing and being tested. When you need constant proof of someone else's feelings, the problem isn't them. It's that you don't believe you're worthy of being chosen without having to earn it every single day. Jenna and I worked together for a while after that reading. And slowly, very slowly, she started noticing when she'd get that urge to test Marcus. That tightness in her chest. That voice that says, if he really cared, he'd. And instead of acting on it, she'd pause. She'd write in her journal. She'd call a friend. Sometimes she even told Marcus directly, "Hey, I'm feeling insecure right now. Can we talk for just a few minutes?" And you know what happened? Marcus showed up every single time. Not because he passed some test, but because she finally let him see her. The real her, the scared her, the vulnerable her, instead of the strategist that is always 3 moves ahead. Sometimes the most courageous thing you can do in love isn't finding the perfect person. It's putting down the scorecard. Let's talk about what Spirit was showing Jenna through the Seven of Swords reverse. This card, when it's upright, isn't necessarily about being a bad person. It's about survival. It's about the part of you that learned early on that the world isn't always safe, that people can hurt you, that you need to be smart, strategic, protected. And there's wisdom in that. I'm not here to tell you to be naive or throw your boundaries out the window. But reverse, this card is Spirit's gentle hand on your shoulder saying, hey, you don't need that armor anymore. You're safe to be seen. See, every time Jenna tested Marcus, she thought she was gathering information, trying to figure out if he's trustworthy. But what she was actually doing was keeping him at arm's length. Because as long as she was testing, she didn't have to fully open. She didn't have to risk being rejected for her real self. The tests were a way to stay in control, to feel like she had power in the relationship. But here's what Spirit knows that we forget: control is not the same thing as safety. Control says I need to manage every outcome to protect myself. Safety says I can be vulnerable here because this person has shown me through constant action that they'll handle my heart with care. Control is rigid, exhausting, lonely. Safety is fluid, restful, connected. Jenna's tests weren't prayers for reassurance. They were prayers spoken in a language of distance. She was essentially saying, please prove to me that you won't leave, but I'm going to make sure you can't get close enough to actually hurt me. And that's a no-win situation for both people. Spirit kept on showing her, through the cards, through her anxiety, through Marcus's exhaustion, that the only way to find out if love is real is to stop testing it and start trusting it. Now, I want to be really clear here. Trusting doesn't mean being stupid. It doesn't mean ignoring red flags or accepting behavior that hurts you. Trusting means paying attention to patterns over time, watching what someone does, not just what they say, seeing if their actions match their words, consistently, not just when it's convenient. And if those patterns show you that someone is reliable, present, and invested, then the work becomes internal. The work becomes about learning to receive love instead of constantly interrogating it. So just sit with that for a second. What if every person who ever failed your test wasn't actually failing you? They were just refusing to participate in the game where no one wins. What if the real test isn't, will they chase me when I pull away? But can I stay present when my fear tells me to run? Let's talk about what testing does to polarity, to that magnetic push and pull between masculine and feminine energy. And remember, this isn't about gender. This is about energetic dynamics that create attraction in relationships. The healthy feminine opens, she reveals, she trusts, she invites. The healthy masculine holds, he leads, he stays steady, he creates a container safe enough for her to let go in. But when testing enters the picture, the whole dance collapses. When the feminine tests, she's not opening, she's closing. She's not inviting, she's evaluating. And instead of trusting the masculine to show up, she's constantly checking to see if he will. That energy, that doesn't feel like an invitation. It feels like an interrogation. And here's what happens to the masculine in response. He either gets defensive and shuts down, or he starts performing, jumping through hoops, constantly proving himself, being smaller to fit her ever-changing expectations. Either way, polarity dies, because polarity requires presence. It requires both people to be in their power, not one person managing the other's insecurity. David Dea talks about this beautifully in The Way of the Superior Man. He says the feminine will test the masculine, not consciously, but instinctively, because she needs to know if he's grounded enough to handle her emotions without falling apart. She needs to know, if I bring my full self, my joy, my rage, my fear, my desire, will you hold steady or will you crumble? That's a healthy test. That's not manipulation. That's polarity doing what it's designed to do. And there's a huge difference between that and what Jenna was doing. A healthy test is unconscious. It's your nervous system checking. Can I relax here? An unhealthy test is strategic. It's your fear saying, let me create chaos to see if you'll stay. One is about feeling safe enough to open. The other is about staying in control so you never have to. See the difference? Jenna's tests weren't checking Marcus's groundness. They were trying to manage her own anxiety by keeping him off balance. That's not polarity. That's just two nervous people trying to control an outcome instead of trusting a process. When Marcus finally told Jenna he felt like he was on trial, he was actually doing something really powerful. He was setting a boundary. He was saying, I care about you. I want to be here, but I can't keep proving myself every single day. At some point, you have to choose to trust me or we're done. That's masculine leadership. Not controlling, not demanding, just clear. And when Jenna started choosing vulnerability over testing, when she started saying, I'm scared, instead of, let me see if he notices that I'm pulling away, that's when her feminine energy could finally relax. That's when polarity came back. Not because they were playing roles, but because they were both finally being real. Real polarity doesn't need games, it needs presence and trust. Let's just breathe with that. The idea that the dance works best when both people stop trying to control the music. All right, let's make this practical because understanding why we test is one thing. Actually stopping, that takes awareness and new tools. First, and this is huge, you need to learn to recognize your testing. Most of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it. It feels like we're just being cautious, or gathering information, or protecting ourselves. But here's how you know it's a test. Ask yourself, am I doing this to communicate something true? Or am I doing this to see how they'll react? If you're pulling back, is it because you generally need space or because you want to see if they'll pursue? If you're mentioning someone else, is it relevant to the conversation or are you just checking for jealousy? If you're going quiet, is it because you're processing or because you want them to notice and prove they care? See, real communication comes from a grounded place. It's about expressing what's true for you in the moment. Testing comes from anxiety. It's about trying to control someone else's response. Once you spot the difference, that's when everything changes. Second practice, the pause before the test. This is something I've learned to do myself, and it saved me from so much unnecessary drama. When you feel that urge to test, that tightness in your chest, that voice that said, let's see what happens if I stop. Don't text, don't pull back, don't act on it yet. Instead, grab your journal or open your notes app and write, what am I actually afraid of right now? Because underneath every test is a fear. Maybe it's, I'm afraid they're going to leave, or I'm afraid I'm more invested than they are, or I'm afraid if I'm fully myself, they won't want me. Name that fear. Don't judge it. See it clearly. Then ask yourself, is there any evidence that this fear is true right now? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. The fear is old. It's from a wound that hasn't healed yet. And you're about to make the person in front of you pay for something they didn't do. Once you see that clearly, you have a choice. You can test them and create the very distance you're afraid of. Or you can share that fear directly. Hey, I'm feeling insecure right now. Can we talk? That's vulnerability. That's the opposite of testing. Third practice, reassurance scripts. For those of you with anxious attachment, and look, a lot of us have it in some form. One of the hardest things is learning to ask for reassurance directly instead of testing it indirectly. So let me give you some language. Instead of going cold and waiting for them to notice, try, I'm feeling a little disconnected today. Can we check in tonight? Instead of mentioning someone else to see if they get jealous, try, I'm feeling uncertain about where we stand. Can we talk about what you're feeling about us? Instead of canceling plans to see if they'll fight for you, try, I've been feeling like I'm more invested than you. Can you help me understand where your head's at? Yes, it feels vulnerable. Yes, it feels risky. But testing is risky too. You're just hiding the risk behind strategy. At least with direct communication, you're giving the relationship a real chance. Fourth practice, track your green zone people. This is something we talked about in the emotional safety episode. It applies here too. Make a list of people in your life you don't feel that you need to test. People you can relax around. People whose affection for you feels solid, consistent, safe. For Jenna, it was her best friend, Sarah. She never had to wonder if Sarah cared. She never analyzed Sarah's texts or went silent to see if Sarah would reach out. She just trusted. And that's what you're looking for in romantic love too. That same quality of trust, that same feeling of, I don't have to perform or prove anything. I can just be. And here's the key. The more you practice being that person for yourself, the more you offer yourself that unconditional presence, the less you need to test others for it. Fifth, build your internal safety daily. This is real work. Not just stopping the test, but healing the wounds that make you feel like you need them in the first place. That may look like therapy. It may look like journaling, meditation, moving, talking to trusted friends. Whatever it is for you, make it a practice. Not something you do when you're spiraling, but something you do consistently to build that sense of internal safety. Because here's the truth: no amount of reassurance from another person will ever be enough if you don't feel you're worthy of being chosen. The work is internal, always. So before you send that test text, before you pull away to see if they chase, before you create distance to feel safe, pause, breathe, ask yourself what you're really afraid of. Then give yourself the reassurance you've been asking them to provide. Let's be honest for a minute. A lot of women say they want a man who's steady, consistent, someone who shows up without games. But then the moment a man does that, the moment he's reliably present, calm, not reacting to every emotional test, they call him boring or emotionally unavailable or not masculine enough. Because here's what's actually happening: they're addicted to the drama, to the uncertainty, to the feeling that they have to work for love because that's the only version of love they've ever known. And when someone offers them stability, their nervous system doesn't recognize it as safe. It recognizes it as suspicion. If he's not chasing me when I pull away, does he even care? If he's not jealous when I mention other guys, is he even invested? If he's calm when I'm emotional, is he even paying attention? These questions aren't about him. They're about you not trusting that love can be easy, that someone can care about you without you having to constantly test their devotion, that you can be chosen without having to earn it every single day. And here's the hard truth: men do this too. Guys will say that they want a woman who's independent, who has her own life, who doesn't need constant validation. But when the woman gives them space, when she's not clinging or anxious or constantly asking, "Where is this going?" they start to wonder if she even likes them. So they test. They'll pull back to see if she'll pursue. They'll get distance to see if she'll panic. It's the same fear wearing different clothes. Testing is not a gender thing, it's a wound thing. It's what happens when you learn that love is conditional, that attention is scarce, that you have to fight for scraps instead of sitting down at a table where you're actually wanted. And here's what nobody tells you: the more you test, the more you push away exactly what you're looking for. Because good people, secure people, healthy people, they don't stick around for games. They don't chase inconsistency. They don't find drama sexy. They don't prove themselves over and over again to someone who refuses to believe them. They just leave quietly, without fanfare. Then you're left wondering why you keep ending up with people who are unavailable or inconsistent. And the answer is because those are the only people that are willing to play the game. Secure people don't play, they just show up. And when you test them, they walk. So if you keep on saying, "I want a healthy relationship," but you're still testing everyone who gets close, you don't actually want healthy. You want familiar. And familiar is what keeps you lonely. Here's the truth you may not be ready to hear yet: you're not testing them to see if they're worthy of you. You're testing love itself to see if it's real. Because somewhere along the way, you stop believing in it. And until you do the work to rebuild that belief, not in the perfect person, but in your own worthiness to be loved, you're going to keep on pushing away everyone who's actually capable of loving you will. That's not judgment. That's just what spirit sees. That's the pattern underneath the pattern. And if you see yourself in this, good. Awareness is the first step, always. So just sit with that. What if the love you've been seeking doesn't need to be tested? What if it just needs to be received? Here's what I want you to try this week. First, the 48-hour rule. When you feel the urge to test someone, to pull back, go quiet, create distance, give yourself 48 hours before you act on it. Write down exactly what you're feeling, what you're afraid of, what you're hoping the test will prove. Then come back to it 2 days later and read it. I promise you, 90% of the time, that urgent need to test will be past. And you'll see clearly that it wasn't about them. It was about your own anxiety needing to be managed. Second, practice trust reps. Just like you build muscles at a gym, you build trust through repetition. Start small. If someone says they'll call you on Tuesday, choose to believe them. Don't send a just checking in text on Monday night. Don't create a backup plan in case they flake. Just believe them and see what happens. When they follow through, and most of the time they will, notice how that feels in your body. That's what trust feels like: calm, grounded, safe. Practice that feeling. Let your nervous system learn it. Third, replace test with transparency. Every time you catch yourself wanting to test, translate that energy into a direct statement. I miss you instead of going silent. I'm feeling insecure about us instead of mentioning someone else. I need reassurance today instead of canceling plans. Will it feel vulnerable? Absolutely. Will some people not know how to handle it? Sure. But those people will never pass your tests anyway. At least this way, you'll know faster and you don't have to waste energy on games. Fourth, create your safety inventory. Write down the top 5 things that make you feel safe in a relationship. Not what you think you should want, but what actually makes you feel calm. For Jenna, it was constant communication, being invited into his life, like meeting friends and family, physical affection, planning future dates together, him initiating difficult conversations instead of avoiding them. Once you know what safety looks like for you, you can ask for it directly. You don't have to test for it. Hey, it helps me feel connected when we check in once a day. Is that something you're comfortable with? Simple, clear, no games. And fifth, the most important one, work on your internal relationship with trust. If you don't trust yourself, if you don't trust that you'll be okay even if someone leaves, even if someone disappoints you, you're going to test everyone who gets close. So build that trust internally first. Prove to yourself that you can handle hard conversations, that you can survive rejection, that you can choose yourself when someone else doesn't. That internal foundation, that's what lets you stop testing, because you're not looking to the other person to create your safety. You've already built it within. So before we close, just remember, your worth is not up for debate, and anyone who makes you feel like you have to prove it isn't your person. A few months after our reading, Jenna sent me a text I'll never forget. She said, I didn't get it right away. I still caught myself wanting to test Marcus, but I started noticing it faster. And instead of acting on it, I tell him. And you know what? He never made me feel bad for being scared. He just showed up over and over until I finally believed him. That's the transformation right there. She didn't stop being afraid overnight. She didn't suddenly become perfectly secure, but she stopped making Marcus pay for her fear. She stopped turning every interaction into a test. And in that space, in that vulnerability, real trust starts to grow. See, trust isn't something you build through tests. It's something you build through consistency. Theirs and yours. Them showing up. You letting them being steady. You choosing to believe it. And sometimes the hardest part isn't finding someone trustworthy. It's learning to trust yourself enough to receive their love, to stop interrogating it, to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop, to just be there, present, open. So wherever you're listening from, maybe driving home from a date that felt good, but you're already questioning it. Maybe lying in bed, wondering if you should text first or wait for them to reach out. Maybe realizing you just sabotaged something real. Just breathe. You're not damaged goods. You're just scared. And fear makes us do things that don't make sense, like pushing away the very people who want to stay. But you can learn a different way. You can choose vulnerability over strategy, transparency over tests. It won't feel natural at first. Your nervous system will fight you. It'll say, this is dangerous. You need to stay in control. But what if the real danger isn't trusting too much? What if it's just never trusting at all? And here's your spirit whisper for this week. Trust disappears where trust is felt. Let that follow you into your next text, your next date, your next moment of panic when your mind starts spinning stories. Because the spirit of dating isn't about finding someone who passes all your tests. It's about becoming someone who doesn't need them anymore. And if you've been following this series from the beginning, you can see how all this connects. Self love gives you the foundation, safety lets your nervous system relax. Understanding the difference between real attraction and fantasy keeps you from chasing illusions. And now, trust replaces the need to constantly prove yourself worthy. Each layer builds on the last, and when you have all of them, that's when love stops feeling like work and starts feeling like home. If today's conversations about testing sparked something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment below, send me a DM, or leave a voice message on the website. Tell me if you've caught yourself testing someone. Have you been on the receiving end of it? What patterns are you seeing in your own relationships? Your stories matter, and some of them might even become part of a future episode. Every so often, I'll also pull a few cards for listeners who are open to a mini tarot reading on their situation. You can leave me a private voice message right on the spiritofdating.com website. Just tap the mic icon. When you share your story, you're not just helping yourself see more clearly. You're giving someone else permission to recognize their own patterns too. Every story has a mirror, every mirror a map. And if this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Maybe that friend who keeps sabotaging good relationships. Maybe your sister who's stuck in that testing cycle. It helps more people find their way to calmer, more trusting love. This is the Spirit of Dating. Real stories, real spirit, real dating. I'm George Thus. You can find me at Dust Tarot for personal readings or connect with me on social media. Until next time, put down the scorecard. Trust is earned through consistency, not tests.